Modern mankind, used to that bottle of vitamin pills being handy and cheap, or used to a wide variety of foods in our stores, will likely not be prepared for the deficiency diseases that can develop during times of catastrophe and shortage. In the modern world, we're used to thinking of that glass of orange juice at breakfast, or at least a vitamin pill to give us our daily dose of vitamin C. If not orange juice, then perhaps a fruit salad at lunch. Certainly fruits such as citrus, kiwi, papaya, pineapple, and berries are very high in vitamin C. But what if catastrophe has struck and delivery of these fresh fruits are not possible? You've consumed your last can of frozen orange juice, taken your last vitamin pill. Orange and lemon trees are not grown in your region. What to do? If you're lucky enough or wise enough to have a garden, during the growing season you can rely upon strawberries in season and tomatoes, as well as bell peppers. Before you doze off and think this is all merely a matter of growing yummy things in your garden, let me delve into the dangers of a vitamin C deficiency. Remember, you may not be able to garden temporarily, and you may have a hard winter to survive when fresh produce is not at hand. What if, as in days of yore, you were at sea eating pork and biscuits and developed scurvy? Scurvy causes lethargy, skin spots, bleeding gums, loss of teeth, fever, and death. British sailors consumed limes to the extent that the sailors were nicknamed limeys. The early symptoms of scurvy included spongy and bleeding gums, pain in the joints, and blood spots appearing under the skin. As the disease progressed, the teeth would become loose, extreme bad breath would develop, and afflicted would become too weak to walk and would die, and I quote, mid-sentence, often from a burst blood vessel. So before I go on, because you're not seeing any pictures on the broadcast, I dug up some pictures, which I'll have on my YouTube, of this hour, and it's awful. It's like blood bruises, all over the skin, everywhere, and the gums just endlessly bleed and shrink. All the teeth fall out because the gums are just spongy and bleeding. In other words, you're hemorrhaging everywhere, and it's a certain death. Okay, as a matter of
What's
fact,
interesting, Nancy, though, if I might interrupt there,
sure.
I've always heard the term limeys. I knew it was associated with British, not necessarily all British, but the ones that colonized were referred to in maybe it wasn't a derogatory term, maybe it was just a term, but limeys being the fact that they carried limes to prevent the scurvy, not only getting the vitamin C, but also the vitamin B vitamins from that. I didn't know about the limey reference being the actual. That's interesting.
Yeah, they developed that because some doctor put two and two together, and they could make the trip. This is how bad it got. Many of the early explorers from Europe lost great numbers of men to scurvy. Vasco da Gama lost 116 out of 170 men. What is that? That's like 60-70% in 1499. Right. And in 1520, Magellan lost 208 out of 230. Well, that's 90-something%. The vast majority were due to scurvy. Scurvy is fatal and a miserable way to go. And vitamin C, people don't. It's right under your nose. Here's how available it is. Now, I'm going to give you the garden variety to start, and then we're going to move to weeds and other sources. And we're going to discuss how the Eskimo gets by without scurvy, because they sure don't have orange juice, all those eons up there in the Arctic Circle. Okay, cabbage. Now that I have your attention, here are a few solutions. Citrus and fruits may be yummy, but they're not the highest in vitamin C content. Leafy vegetables and cabbage cousins are just as good, if not better. Broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts are among the highest in vitamin C, in fact, higher than orange juice, and they store well. what do you think the Amish do? They have these huge cabbage fields, and they tuck the cabbage away, and they eat coleslaw for one thing, or sauerkraut all winter long, and they do fine. And I'm talking about, 100 years ago when the Amish did not have oranges. These plants survive in a root cellar, a cool place, which in any case is a necessity, as cabbages are biennial and only go to seed in their second year. Heat kills vitamin C, so eating raw is best. Why do you think coleslaw is so popular? In other words, you eat a half a cup of coleslaw, forget the orange juice. And cabbages are just a staple in northern climates, Europe and North America. I'm sure this is also true in China. China has different varieties of cabbage which are not biennial. There are annuals, for instance. So the cabbage family, a must for anybody who's going to develop a garden. Kale.
Also, one thing about cabbage, though, that I want to interject from my experience as a chef, the fresher the better, but it will keep, and you want to eat it as raw as possible. And people think, well, what about sauerkraut or kimchi? Isn't that cooked? Well, technically, it's not cooked. It's fermented. It's aged and fermented with acids to protect it from bacteria, but there is some live cultures going on there, but it's not cooked at all during the process. It's not really meant to be cooked. So that's a good way to store it. You can can that or preserve it for, if you do have some cabbage that's in the cellar that you're getting late into the season on, where, the outer edges are already starting that process. Peel that off, chop it up, and, start a sauerkraut batch or a kimchi. It is fermented cabbage. You follow a recipe, obviously, do your research, and it's going to smell weird for a while because it's fermenting. So it's fermenting cabbage, so that's all, it's going to smell like sauerkraut in your house,
Well,
but that's
I
another
know
way
that,
to preserve it.
Yeah, isn't that also a source of probiotics? I've heard that, but I'm not real certain. Right. But there is some kind of a cabbage something that is just filled with probiotics, and they develop in there just like yogurt does. Yogurt is a probiotic source, so lots of these are really good foods to have in your garden. And here's another one, kale. I took a look at all these pictures of kale. I had no idea that when you go to a restaurant and they toss on a little greenery as a garnish, it's just supposed to look, kind of pretty, although I eat it. Well, it turns out it's sky high in vitamin C and very easy to grow. Kale cousins are also high in vitamin C. Kale comes in many forms, but as a biennial, needs to be wintered over in a sheltered bed or a root cellar. Kale can reportedly be found green and alive under the snow. This is a salad green, so eating raw for the highest vitamin C content is a natural. So, what do we mean by biennial? For those that are not garden buffs, it means that you put the seed in the ground, and the first year up it comes. Parsley, most of the cabbage family, kale, and I think some of the onions, etc. are, and this means that in a normal temperate environment, where perhaps you just get a little snow, or the ground doesn't freeze hard like it does up here in Wisconsin and Canada. And the next year up it comes and throws up seed shoots. Carrots are another one that's a biennial. The second year it goes to seed, and dill and some of the well, maybe I'm wrong about dill, but and then you collect the seeds. So you have to have it wintered over, and where the ground freezes solid. Here, when we had the polar vortex, normally Wisconsin goes down 2.5 feet in the village that I live in. And during the polar vortex a couple of winters ago, it went down 5 to 6 feet. So in those cases, the plants die, even if you've covered them over with a little ground. So you have to bring them into what they call a root cellar, no light, cool, and just wait until spring and then put it out. Okay, Peas is another one high in vitamin C. If you fail to start your garden early and lack the skill or the seeds for kale and cabbage cousins, there are annuals that are high in vitamin C too. Both green and snow peas are high in vitamin C, and you can eat the pods, which is what you're doing with snow peas, and the leaves too. You know, we throw away too much of our garden produce. If you're a survival camp and you're not getting anything from the grocery store, you know, we toss things that are edible. You know, well, you don't want to eat tomato greens because that's a nightshade, a family. You don't want to give it to your livestock either. And the same with potatoes, you know, but normally like beans or peas, etc., you can eat that stuff, the leaves and the like. And so peas are an annual that is high in vitamin C. Now, here's for the trivia question. The Eskimos don't garden. They don't import citrus, nor do they have traditional vitamin pills either. How do they avoid scurvy? How have they avoided scurvy all these millennia? The Eskimo diet is eaten almost entirely raw. Inside those igloos, there may be a lamp burning whale oil, but they're not having a barbecue. Have you ever seen an igloo with a big fire burning in the middle? Nope.
No.
You see that little light, that little cup made out of stone with oil burning in it. The Eskimos get their vitamin C from raw meat, skin, and the liver, primarily of the seals they eat and the fish they eat. And why is this important? This is a fascinating bit of info. Almost all life forms create vitamin C. You know, they generate it. The squirrels, you know, the chickens, they're out there in the sunlight, and they don't even have to be in the sunlight. They just generate it in their bodies. But guess who doesn't? Humans and the branch of apes that have, from which humans have sprung. And also they found most bats and guinea pigs do not generate vitamin C, but every other animal does, right? Among the monkeys, the tarsiers and the simians cannot manufacture their own. And this branch of the monkey tree includes humans. Sorry, creationists, there's that link again. Sorry to say, survivalists, bugs do not contain vitamin C. And I'm throwing this in because we're going to get into bugs and weeds and earthworms, and they are what a salvation they are if you are really in a tight spot and your teeth start getting soft and bloody. Bugs do not contain vitamin C, or so little that it doesn't even matter.
Right, they're primarily protein, fiber, and fat. So they're good proteins. Right.
Yeah.
They're good for protein.
Excellent protein. Excellent. And a better sort, you'd be better off feeding the bugs your grain or whatever you're feeding your cattle, because you get more protein and fat from raising bugs than you do from raising cows and the like, or livestock. And here's the thing to remember about bugs is that they'll eat dead stuff. If
right.
you have a herd of cattle, they want to graze on grass. And even goats that are very tolerant of almost anything, including poison ivy, they're not going to eat rotting flesh. But bugs will. They love rotting flesh, and they love manure. And then you get protein and fats and plenty of B vitamins. Wait till we get there. All right, so now we're still on vitamin C, and you're in a catastrophe. You have no vitamin pills, no traditional garden produce. You didn't get your garden in, or you didn't collect enough, or you never got your seeds in the first place, or you're running from the city, and you're foraging through the suburbs, and the wildlife in the area is hunted almost to extinction, so forget eating raw meat, skin, and liver there, which would help you a lot, and you're starting to get bleeding gums. Oh, now what? Well, weeds are your answer, and I kid you not. I can't stress this enough. Many plants that are considered weeds are sky high in vitamin C, and if winter is coming, one can dry and store them. Drying foods is one of the best preservation techniques. The only thing that kills vitamin C is heat. Well, I guess after a time it would break down like anything. They say the expiration date, yada yada yada. Even dried weeds would have an expiration date of something, but it's not going to be entirely gone as you go through the winter. And you can lay things out, dry them, and put them in a Ziploc or a baggie or something like that, and just munch dry weeds, and you're getting your vitamin C. Or take some plants indoors with you and keep them on the windowsill. Sheep sorrel is a ground-hugging leafy plant like grass and grows throughout Europe and North America. I purchased seed for my garden and was surprised to find I already had it in my lawn right under my nose. It's a very low-light plant requiring little sunlight. Now, I heard about sheep sorrel from someone in Kansas and who was a gardener. I said, oh, low-light plant because, on this, what with the clouds potentially getting denser and all the volcanic burping that's going on, and less sunlight getting through, low-light plants are something to look into. Potatoes are a low-light plant, for instance, and sheep sorrel is one of those grow in the shade, very high in vitamin C. I said, I have to have that in my garden. I try to have in my garden when people come, for a TV interview and the like. Here comes the film crew, and we drag out there, and I show them all the weeds that I have that are edible weeds, or I try to. Well, I bought this seed and planted it, and what came up was exactly what I had here and there in my lawn, because in those days I was not trying to get rid of weeds, using any kind of now I actually do. I want a good-looking lawn, so it's not there anymore, but it's still in my garden. And it was right under my nose. Apparently it's spread everywhere in Canada and North America, and it's all over Europe. And it's so anyway, look it up, and if you've got some nearby, or you're going through a suburb and you're foraging your way out of the city, desperately trying to get somewhere where you can garden or where people have gardening going on, don't hesitate, And it tastes like lettuce. I mean, this stuff is not bitter or sour. Scurvy grass, that's another one. I thought it looked like grass, and I was surprised that it does not. It has little leaves, not unlike sheep sorrel, and it flowers readily, and it grows up and down the cliffs in Scotland, Scandinavia, the UK, and it's probably got its name, scurvy grass, because the sailors discovered, in addition to limes, that if you ate that stuff, you didn't get scurvy. It's notoriously high in vitamin C. Get some seed and grow it in your window box or plant it in your garden. I'm sure it's a survivor because Scandinavia and Wales, they have winter and they have snow. These northern climes are not noted for high sunlight, so scurvy grass is yet another low-light plant. Okay, here we go, another weed, dandelion. Wow, the faithful. People make dandelion wine, and they think of it as a terrible weed and go at it. They're very high in vitamin C, the leaves, not the flowers. If you're trapped in suburbia, head down to that neighbor who never killed the weeds in his yard. He's the one who's got the weeds and most likely plenty of seed waiting to sprout in the spring. Now he could become your hero. The dandelion is our friend, an entirely edible plant, by the way, as is cattail and stinging nettle and plantain and most other weeds. They are entirely edible. I don't know why we call them weeds. I think it's because they may be a little more bitter, they have a stronger taste, etc., that type of thing.
So they were imported to the... weren't they imported from Europe to North America somehow?
Dandelion, I'm not sure about dandelion. I'm not familiar with that.
Maybe.
But it could very well be. It could very well be. There's a lot of stuff that went back and forth, and I've lost track. But I've only touched on 3 weeds, sheep sorrel, scurvy grass, and dandelion. But that doesn't mean that the rest do not have vitamin C. My point is, don't turn your back on what Mother Nature is providing. And remember, if you don't, catch a squirrel and eat the meat and the skin and the liver, and don't cook it. If you're really worried about scurvy, I'm talking bare bones. It's either you or the scurvy, so you have to sometimes change your mores. Spices. If your situation is so dire that you're out of weeds, it's winter, right? Don't forget the spice cabinet. Hot peppers are very high in vitamin C, even dried on pepperoni, jalapeno, etc. Red peppers.
Cayenne.
So cayenne. There we are. And they don't cook this stuff. They grind it up. They dry it and grind it up. Okay, when you see it in the store, there it is. It's like garlic. They hang long strings of red peppers, all dried and shriveled. Well, drying doesn't kill the vitamin C. Heat does. Horseradish is also a very good source of vitamin C. Well, I think when you have horseradish sauce, they put it in vinegar, but they don't cook the horseradish. They just chop it up.
Right.
So that's got vitamin C in it. So raid the old refrigerator door, and look for that bottle of horseradish if you're in a pinch. You can also grow horseradish in your garden and put it in the root cellar for the next year, I would presume. Potato. Here's the happy surprise. Who doesn't have a bag of potatoes somewhere? Chances are this is going to be one of the last things. It doesn't need to be refrigerated, etc. And it's very high in vitamin C. Oh, and they're so easy to grow. What you do with a potato plant is you have to have a cutting. They do go to seed, but they do flower, I want to say, but they don't really produce a seed. And you have to have a cutting. And anybody who's had a potato sitting around in the sunlight as it's beginning to get warmer in the spring, and you see all those little sprouts coming out everywhere, the potato is trying to grow. Well, you cut that up so that every piece has one of those sprouts and put it in the ground, and it becomes a potato plant with roots all over the place, maybe a dozen potatoes on the roots. And then in the fall you dig that up. Now everybody might be leaving some potatoes in the ground, maybe in warmer climes where the ground doesn't freeze solid. That happens, so that what was left in the ground as you did your harvesting, whoops, that's your next year's crop. It can be, But just, you've got some potatoes. It's in your root cellar, like probably with your apples or what else. You're just trying to keep fresh through the winter, which is what people do before the days of refrigeration. They did that in the cool, in the cold cellar.
One nice thing about potatoes, though, too, Nancy, is that that's a really resilient low-light plant as well. So if we're talking about, cloudy skies or ashen skies or just not enough sunlight in an area, if you're doing an urban garden especially, you don't have access to the 12 hours or the full sun that a lot of these bigger plants like tomatoes would require. Potatoes are a great option, and they do store very well. The burlap sack is a great option. Don't expose them to light. Don't store them in plastic when you're storing them, and don't expose them to light because the light breaks them down and activates them and wants to make them into sprouting plants, and that's what degrades the potatoes. So
that's right. Heat and light.
From it. Heat and light. That's right.
Heat and light is what does it. And garlic will do the same thing. If you've got garlic and heat and light, and there it goes. It's trying to grow, right in your kitchen wherever you happen to have it. So that's just Mother Nature doing her thing. Okay, now we'll move into the B vitamins, and here's where I was happy to find that bugs to the rescue. Now, you can't just go out in your yard and say, okay, bug, come on, bug. You what it is that you tip over something that's rotting, like maybe a log. If you tip over a log that's rotting, you have all kinds of grubs and things dashing for cover, or, you can hear the crickets, and try to find them that way. Grasshoppers are great. Locust swarms are not a curse. I remember that movie that I was watching about Hidalgo, this horse, that was from the American West, and apparently a true story, and across the Arabian sands. And somebody told the guy, don't consider the locust swarms a curse. This will save your life. And of course, it did. He ate the locusts, and so did his horse, and blah blah blah. So, in any case, remember they like things that rot. They're in moist places, and if there's roadkill, you're liable to find that writhing with fly larvae, and they are very good for you. Okay. And also chickens. If you've got chickens, the chickens will go crazy. They run around and they go nuts if they have a bug swarm.
They know what's good.
And then they give you chicken breasts and eggs and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So the only reason we don't eat bugs is we have more fun with chicken breasts and eggs. But it doesn't mean that in many countries they are increasingly eating bugs and encouraged to do so by the UN.
What's interesting too is there's other varieties that you can get past the actual eating of the bugs and the crunchiness of it, because it's got they're bugs, they're insects, they have exoskeletons. It's gross to some people. There's cricket flour out there that you can add a little bit to, it's used a lot in paleo cuisine and paleo baking, because these things weren't, wheat wasn't available back when cavemen were, making whatever baked goods. So it's like, you can find it if you look for it. A lot of these supplements people are already taking with their normal, taking their B vitamin or their B complex pill and all that. And just think about when that's not available anymore. You have to get down and dirty sometimes. And it's like sorrel and bugs are options here.
That's right.
We're not promoting it as a lifestyle. Check it out, though.
But it's better than the B vitamin deficiencies, and we're getting to that, and it's a horror. Oh my goodness! So yes, indeed, you can kill the bugs, crush them so they die, and then dry them, and then crunch them up, grind them up, and bag that stuff, and it's protein powder. Absolutely. And I was surprised, and further on in my lecture here, I'm getting to earthworms, and what they provide if a bug doesn't, like the creepy crawlies, don't provide it. And they produce and package earthworm powder for livestock feed or dog and cat feed, and they dry it and grind it up, and there you are, So B vitamins, okay. The B vitamin complex are vitamins that are found broadly in foods. I don't know why they're grouped together, and they go all the way up to some high number, but they skip a few numbers, because after a while they found out that they name it something different. I don't know, but now why we have 1, 2, 3, and 6 and 12, and I'm not sure. But in any case, one almost has to work at it to avoid them. That's what I gather, because they're in such a broad variety of foods, plant foods, animal foods, etc. But when deficiencies arise, it's usually because somebody has a very restricted diet, or they're using highly refined foods. B vitamins are found in meats, fish, nuts, grains, dairy like eggs and milk, vegetables and fruits, and deficiency diseases appear because of a limited diet, like maybe a prisoner of war camp, or in some country where they just don't have, they plant one thing and then that's what they eat, all year, and it's kind of like they don't know any better, or they think they're doing the right thing, and I have to say it's kind of like stupidity. But wait till you hear beriberi, which I have pictures of people dying of beriberi. That's vitamin B1 deficiency. They look like they're starving to death. They look like the people in the Nazi death camps, where stick people, or in Serbia, or Croatia, where the Muslims were being starved to death by the Serbs. Just sticks. But that's not from lack of food. It's from the lack of a B vitamin, which is also known as thiamine. Beriberi occurs almost exclusively amongst the richer members of society in the past who insisted on white rice. Vitamin B1 is found in cereal grain husks primarily. The poor ate brown rice, and the rich insisted on white rice because, of course, they weren't going to get down and dirty. They had to be elite. So then they would come down with weakness, pain, weight loss, difficulty walking, and emotional disturbances, and eventually they croaked. It became one of the leading causes of death in regions where white rice was the way to go. I'm presuming this is like England or, the elite in high society. So, be elite, eat white rice, die. Now, where do we find this in nature? If you're in a distressed situation and foraging for food, and you don't have brown rice, because how many people have tons of that? As a matter of fact, when you're storing and you're saying, I need beans and rice in my bunker in case, there's a food shortage, at least we'll have rice. Well, I've done a little of that. I have a couple of bags, and guess what? It's white rice. It's not brown rice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
So,
well, most survivalists and preparedness experts recommend brown rice for the nutritional value. The downside with brown rice, as opposed to white rice, is brown rice's shelf life is like 1/3 of white rice because it has the hole in there and it degrades and it doesn't rot. It sours, like garlic would, whereas white rice has a much longer shelf life. So those of people out there that are putting together survival bunkers or survival caches are putting white rice in there, not knowing that they're shortchanging themselves. Okay, you're getting the other benefits of it, as in starch and some protein and some other minerals, but you're shortchanging yourself on the bees, the stuff that processes that food, and that's, you got to do the research.
Yeah. Now I have here in my notes that beans and nuts have vitamin B1, thiamine. So, people talk about, beans and rice, where you cook up the beans and cook up the rice and you ladle a big one on top of the other and there you are. So I'm not sure about the shelf life of dried beans like pinto or whatever, but that would
better than brown rice from my research.
Good.
So
Good to know. So then I won't become a walking skeleton.
No, you'd be fine.
All right. Thiamine, vitamin B1 in bugs. Here's a happy note. Most insects are very rich in vitamin B1, particularly flies, caterpillars, and crickets. They have more B1 than beef, pound for pound. You're better off eating bugs than you are eating red meat. And they're also rich in protein and fats, as we mentioned before. You're better off raising insects, and people do that. In Asia, for instance, they have insect farms, and they just and they harvest them and they sell them by the pound in the markets. I guess they also eat things like octopus and eels and other weird things. Okay.
Right.
Even scorpions. Scorpions are apparently edible. Okay. If you're
they
foraging,
don't kill you.
You have to whack them first.
Right, you got to kill them first.
Yeah. If you're foraging and collecting grass seeds from your wild grass in your lawn, now uncut, suburban lawns, you might be covered as well. Now, I thought about that. Like we get out there with a lawnmower. Well, in case there's a catastrophe and the roads are all torn up and no food is being delivered, and everybody says, oh, well, we haven't cut the grass. Well, why can't people eat grass seed? If you hear scrambling around, I have a kitty playing with her little catnip toy here, so it's not me. Okay. Vitamin B2, riboflavin, also known as, is found also in a wide variety of foods. Milk and milk products such as yogurt and cheese, asparagus, spinach, and other dark leafy green vegetables, chicken, fish, and eggs. In other words, these B vitamins are found in a wide range, of foods. That's fine if you've got your garden established, a flock of free-range chickens, and have all that in hand. But what if you don't have any of that? What if you've just escaped the city and you're starving and you're setting out through suburbia, on your way to the city is like a death trap. People are starving and they're about to eat each other, and you've got to get out and you're on the go. Or even if you've got a hobby farm and you have got your chicks, you've got your box of baby chicks, beep beep beep, and they're growing and they don't start laying eggs for a year, and you don't, and you have to worry about, do you have a rooster and the like, and make sure that they're not being eaten by foxes and chicken hawks, swooping down or whatever. I mean, it's not a given that it's not like having a bunch of seeds and tossing them on the ground and now you have a garden. And by the way, you should never be arrogant or casual about that, because anyone who's an experienced gardener will tell you that the learning curve is really there. To learn how to save seed and make sure you don't plant the bean seeds too early and it molders in the ground, because it needs to be a certain temperature before they'll sprout. And if you plant too early, then what you've got is moldering bean seeds. I mean, I learned the hard way through some of this stuff. So you have to assume a learning curve. You have to assume it's going to take you a little while to get established with flocks, herd of goats, gardens, saving seed, yada yada. Okay. What's the next horror to worry about? We had riboflavin with beriberi, and then we had, what was that first one? But vitamin B2.
We were talking about scurvy before we switched over.
Yes, scurvy and beriberi. Okay, B2. All right. What happens if you don't have enough B2? Okay, the pictures that I found on the web are mainly of a big pink tongue, all kinds of flurry stuff on the side, very sore mouth. It's called riboflavinosis. Bright pink tongue, cracked lips, throat swelling, bloodshot eyes, low red blood cell count. Ultimately, this can cause coma and death. All these things march you right to the coffin. True deficiencies are rare in today's world, but about 10% of people in developed countries, we're not talking third world countries, we're talking about, Europe and the U.S., East Coast, and live in a state of slight deficiency. Thought to be from a diet of highly processed foods. Here we go again, white flour, white bread, white rice. There's that diet again. Yep. Okay. Where can you get riboflavin B2? Again, from bugs. And I quote from Rumpold and Schulter, 2013, who compiled nutritional compositions for 236 insects, edible insects. Quote, although significant variation was found in the data, many edible insects provide satisfactory amounts of energy and protein, meet amino acid requirements for humans, are high in monosaturated and or polyunsaturated fatty acids, and are rich in micronutrients such as copper, iron, magnesium, manganese, phosphorus, selenium, and zinc, as well as riboflavin, pantheolic acid, which is another B vitamin, biotin, yet another, and in some cases, folic acid, that's another B vitamin. These are all B vitamins. Note, riboflavin is B2, and the bugs contain this. Okay, another quote from Bukins, 2005, who showed for a whole range of insects that thiamine, vitamin B1, had up to 4 milligrams per 100 grams of dry matter. Riboflavin had up to 8.9 milligrams per 100 milligrams. By comparison, wholemeal bread provides only up to 0.19 milligrams. What we're talking about, whole grain bread is like not even, what, 2% of what bugs will provide. Insects will provide you your vitamin B1 and B2 vitamins way more than whole grain bread, way more than beef. Okay. Pellagra, vitamin B3 deficiencies, again fall into the category of stupid dietary practices or lazy. B3 is niacin and can be found in fish and legumes, but is completely lacking in corn. Here's where the history lesson comes in. After the discovery and exploration of the Americas, corn was grown by settlers all around the world. So tasty and so easily dried and stored. Ah, corn. Pellagra, a deficiency disease, causes diarrhea, dermatitis, dementia, and finally, death. After thousands of deaths, it was discovered that a strict corn diet and a lack of fresh meat was the problem. China, parts of Africa, Indonesia, and North Korea have endemic pellagra among their lowest classes. Now, let me tell you that until they discovered, that it was a B vitamin and figured that one out, right? The running rumor was that corn was poisonous.
Oh yeah.
All right. Okay, so
well,
what is
we're in that process now with GMO foods and corn being a substitute for natural-based sugars in a lot of our products, and you will see these food deserts in cities where you'll see symptoms of vitamin deficiencies, symptoms of scurvy, and other, the mouth problems with pellagra. It's not. You can find this in America right now because cheap food is mass-produced food, which is not really food anymore. It fills you up, but it doesn't do what it used to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to be educated about, and these things that we're talking about are things that we can do after, it all goes bad, that we can do by ourselves. But you should be doing this. Look at the label,
Right.
Do the research.
Exactly. So rashes, big rashes is what you mainly, see as the first symptoms. Okay, are you stuck without fresh fish and legumes in just that box of cornmeal in your cupboard? Earthworms to the rescue. Earthworms are a cousin to fish, which is high in vitamin B3. Earthworms have omega-3 as their essential oil, as does fish oil. They are also high in vitamin B3 per analysis of earthworm powder. It's fed to livestock, as I mentioned. And the earthworms will grow in your compost pile, and they will grow in manure. You can throw your coffee grounds on the ground, and under there, here they come. They go for the rot. They're sky high in protein too, 82% protein. I've eaten them, and I joke, but they taste just like chicken. They are essentially, they do not have a bad taste. That's what I'm trying to say. Slightly oily. B3. All right. What about vitamin B5? We're skipping B4, which seems to have disappeared. Paranesia. This is B5 is kind of a numbing, in the arms and legs, where, and not just like your limb falls asleep, but this sticks around. And B6 is another one, and it's cited in carpal tunnel. And people say, you got carpal tunnel, take B6. Let me tell you, that works. I had this, because I'm on the keyboard forever, and I had the numb hand and the pains shooting up the arm, to the shoulder, and then you have to go and get a surgery and wear a cast and blah blah blah. Took B6, 2 days later, nothing. And if I ran out of B6 and then I got it back and then took the vitamin again, boom, So it's great because what it does is, B6 is involved in the formation of myelin. It's a protein layer that forms around the nerve cells and protects them. Okay, B7 deficiency, biotin. B7 is biotin. But it's in so many foods. But if for some reason your diet is, and they gave an example of fad diets where people say eat raw eggs. You see this. Rocky, the boxer, whatever, and he's putting raw eggs in something and swallowing it down. Well, if because until you cook your egg, you don't release the B7 that's in it. Just in case you're one of these nuts that can only eat raw eggs, and that's all you eat. Well, let's say you're living on a chicken farm and that's all you've got to eat. Cook the eggs so you don't get B7. It causes hair loss, anemia, mental conditions, confusion, drowsiness, depression. I don't think you die from it, but you don't feel so good. Okay, folic acid, vitamin B9, very important. Pregnant women who are growing the fetus, the spine, the brain, etc., or very young children who develop their brain basically within the first 3 years. Spinal bifida, that type of thing, these horrible things where the brain doesn't seem to be there. These kind of things can develop from a lack of folic acid. And they say, very important, folic acid. Folic has the same root word as foliage, the foliage out in the garden, the foliage growing along the... In other words, it's the green stuff, such as spinach and turnip greens, and all kinds of weeds. You don't have to be a gardener, because don't overlook the weeds out there. Wild greens, dandelions, lamb's quarter, amaranth, stinging nettle is particularly rich in folate. Now, lamb's quarter also has calcium. Stinging nettle is also very high in iron. And as a kid who went down into my grandma's swamp and encountered stinging nettle, you don't want to encounter that. But
no, it's called stinging for a reason.
Yes, it feels like you've been bitten by a bunch of bees. But if you steam it, the stinging part goes away, and then you can eat it, and it's very good. And I think the folic acid would be good. And heat does not kill folic acid. Vitamin B12, it's again. Animal foods are the only source of B12, which means that you have to, but you can eat, dairy products. But what if you don't have a flock or a herd? What if the wildlife, well, you can fish, shellfish, crabs or whatever. Vegans are particularly susceptible to B12. It causes gradual brain damage, expresses as fatigue, irritability, depression, bad memory. I don't think you die from it. But it's stored in the liver for a long... Huh?
It slows you down.
Yeah. Slows you down, and you may... and apparently whatever damage to the brain is done, it's permanent, it's irreversible, So man is an omnivore, and what I have to say to vegans is eat a fish now and then.
Right.
And you can't get this from bugs. Bugs are not going to save you from this, Vitamin A includes beta-carotenes. No surprise that carrots are one of the best sources, but also cabbage, cousins, and sweet potato. Sweet potato, very high. Sweet potato is another one you treat just like potato, cut it up and lay it out there. So we're running out of the hour, so I'm trying to rush. Well, if in a pinch, once again, bugs to the rescue. Per Buchan's 2005, retinol, which is the ingredient and carotene content of many insects appears to be very high, with levels in some species as high as, well, I mean, they give a number that's kind of meaningless unless you had a basis of comparison. But let me tell you that the lack of vitamin A produces miserable. It's the cause of blindness around the world. Very very high. And what's the percentage given? Something huge. Okay. Vitamin A deficiency is most notable for its effect on the eyes. According to the World Health Organization, a lack of vitamin A is the leading cause of preventable blindness in children. Conjunctivitis, eye infections, and a damaged cornea is young in life. Also, hypohidrotic keratosis, which is an overgrowth of skin. Unlike a vitamin C and the B vitamins, which the body flushes, and you can't have too much C or B. I mean, you get rid of what you don't need. You can take extra vitamin C, and many people do. They say mega vitamin C, helps me get rid of my cold, that kind of thing. But vitamin A will build up, and it can be poisonous. You do not want to eat a whole bottle of vitamin A pills. People have died from that. They're in the hospital. It's very high in liver also. It's stored in the liver. So if you eat liver of any wildlife you have, you will get your vitamin A, but don't try to subsist solely on liver. Okay.
Right. Again, man is a multivore?
Omnivore.
Omnivore. So spread it out. When it's eating season, eat it. I don't think you're going to overdose on carrots, but you could do it from supplements or from liver. So just spread
too much
it out.
liver. Yes, that's true. If for some reason you work for a butcher shop and they say you can have all the liver you can carry, well, you might have a vitamin A overdose. Vitamin D is known as the sunshine vitamin because you need it, sunshine, in order to synthesize it, I think is the way to put it. You also have to eat some foods that are high in vitamin D that allow you to do this synthesis, like mushrooms are very high. And by the way, mushrooms will grow on manure in the dark. What's that saying? Keeps me in the dark and feeds me bullshit. And there you are. Dairy products are also high in vitamin D. So milk, butter, eggs, and cheese is a good source. Cow liver and fish also. But regardless of your, dietary vitamin D, a little exposure to sunlight, and we're not talking about hours. 15 minutes. Not much. But get out, even in cold weather, and let the sun shine on the face or the face of your toddler a little bit, in addition to some mushrooms or whatever, and you should be okay. What happens if you don't have vitamin D? Oh, Rickets, boy, is that a sad case. The bow-legged, they're showing people and the children, or legs, or some really sad images that you can dredge up, on the internet. Rickets is a deficiency disease caused by the lack of vitamin D. Rickets cause muscles and bones to become soft, which causes them to bend, in whatever path of least resistance. Usually they bow outward, but they can bow inward too. So be aware, that you need to have your vitamin D, which, as I said, is available. So I would recommend to people to remember, as a bottom line, bugs, weeds, an occasional earthworm, and a little meat, fish, or, something from wildlife. If you have to, eat it raw if you don't have any other source of vitamin C, like the Eskimos do. And remember the bottom line. And be prepared, because you could be caught in a very bad situation, and you could come out of it just fine if you're well prepared with information.